to further add on to what my partner has, to his second and third claim, to give you a more depicted and detailed analysis and evidence of why the death penalty should be abolished. I'm going to start with the second claim. The cost of the death penalty is too high in the United States, and it harms United States citizens. First, our first subclaim, it costs too much to keep capital punishment. Cases where the death penalty is sought in the United States cost $1.26 million to trial that person. Contrary to when someone seeks life in prison, the average cost of a trial costs $740,000. That's nearly $500,000 more just to trial someone who you're seeking death row for. And in his claim, he says that in the lifetime of life in prison outweighs the higher cost of someone keeping someone on death row. It costs $90,000 more a year to house an inmate on death row than any other prisoner in the prison population due to enhanced security measures, and that person's on lockdown 23 hours a day, intense lockdown with multiple guards. In California, it costs taxpayers nearly $900 million just to trial its 714 inmates that are currently on death row. And currently in the United States, there are 2,902 people on death row, which equates to over $2 billion, nearly $2.5 billion worth of money of taxpayers just to trial people on death row. Cost amongst the states. Currently, California has the highest cost for housing someone on death row, with a cost of nearly $161,000 to house an inmate on death row, compared to $150,000 nationwide, while any other prisoner in the United States would be around $60,000, and here in California, the highest at $71,000. And it costs, solely in California, it costs $150 million just to house those 714 prisoners on death row. And it costs another $206 million to house the other 1,378 inmates on death row, which equates to $322 million yearly just to house inmates during death row. It takes too long. The process from the time you're convicted to the time you're executed takes simply way too long, and it is not fair. The average inmate on death row is on death row for an average of 15 years. According to LostStackExchange.com. For the duration of that time, the inmate is on death row, and it costs, for 15 years, the average inmate who's on death row for 15 years, it costs over $4 million just to trial them and house them. And for 25% of people on death row, they don't even are executed. They die of natural causes. So a quarter of the people on death row right now, which is about 2,000, a quarter of them won't even be executed. They will die of natural causes on their own. These costs do not include the lengthy and costly appeals process, because when the death penalty is sought in the United States, there is no room for error, because this is someone's life on the line. There cannot be any error at all. So people appeal 20, 30 years. So and also the death penalty executes innocent people. My partner already mentioned one certain case, but here's another case. James Washington, a black man from Virginia, was convicted in 1967 of a double homicide and spent 21 years on death row. DNA evidence later proved that he was innocent, and an innocent man died. This also strengthens our later claim that the death penalty is in fact racist. The death penalty is also outdated in regards that 100 out of 195 nations have abolished it. Currently, the nations that have it are such countries as Pakistan, Syria, Afghanistan, Somalia, North Korea, and proudly uphold the death penalty. So our views on life are more aligned with radical extremists than similarly advanced countries like England, France, Germany, Sweden, Norway, and the list goes on. And since 1973, 158 people that have been on death row have been exonerated. The most recent case was on April 17th of this year in Louisiana. So Since 1973, 158 people have been convicted, spent time on death row, and were later exonerated. The most recent case, that person only spent 4 years on death row, but there's cases that they spent 20, 30 years on death row before being exonerated, which is totally unfair to that person because they're wrongfully convicted, and not wrongfully, they were convicted of, but they could have lost their lives, 158 people. And funding for the death penalty can be utilized elsewhere. Our prison system is so overcrowded in the United States that over 100 prisons in the United States incarcerates 10,000 plus people, with at least 6,500 guards working simultaneously. Compared to similarly advanced countries, according to deathpenaltyinfo.gov.org, my apologies, the U.S. holds the most prisoners in the world and accounts for nearly half the world's prisoners. Since our penal system and people behind bars are so high, you could use that money instead of on death row, reinvest it into our penal system, making bigger prisons to house less people and to prevent overcrowdedness in our penal system. Like, for example, our biggest prison in the United States is Rikers Island in New York that houses 14,000 inmates and nearly 8,500 guards working simultaneously. Compared to similarly advanced countries like France, their biggest prison in France is 2,000 people and their smallest being 10. When our prisons are overcrowded, it increases tension and also violence amongst the inmate population, which is very deadly and consequential. Many consequences arrive from that as well. Thank you.